Welcome to Feeling Asian, a podcast where two Asians talk about their feelings. I'm Youngmi Mayer.
And I'm Bohan Park.
We're recording on Christmas Eve. I'm in a festive mood. You see my tree behind me. If you're watching on YouTube, I have an eggnog.
And I am coming at you live from my parents' place. And there's no decorations in my room. I look like I am in a hospital.
I'm gonna have diarrhea. This is like full cream eggnog. It's not even like coconut milk eggnog or whatever.
Wow, that sounds so foul, and
it's not good. I don't know why I did this.
I was trying to think of something funny to say, but that's all. The best I could come up with is that sounds foul.
The truth, which is, it's weird. Why am I drinking it? I don't know.
This is our last podcast of 2021, Youngmi.
I know, and you know, we thought we'd make it special. We've never done this before. We're doing a annual roundup of our favorite clips from the last year.
Let's take a trip back to, what's that called? Let's take a trip
down
memory lane.
A
stroll down memory lane.
Memory lane.
And reflect on some of our favorite moments on this podcast.
From the last year. A horrible year, 2021. But I have to say, I'm really proud of us. You know, today, Brian, by the time this comes out, the listeners will have seen, today it came out on CNN. We are one of the top podcast discussing race or something. It came out today. Did you know that?
Yeah. Hell yeah, I know that. It's
yeah.
It's caked into how I'm feeling today, but
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
we're featured in CNN, folks. We were named one of the podcasts that answered this year's biggest questions. And that's a high honor. There were a lot of questions this year.
There was a lot of questions, and you know, we wanted to I'm actually really glad that came out, because like a lot of the clips that we discussed today are gonna be those sort of clips. But before I embarrass myself, let's do the Patreon shoutouts, because I don't know what I'm doing, and then we can get to the episode.
Let's do it. Okay, so listeners, you know the drill. Thank you for your continued support throughout this past year, but for those of you who are still wondering if there's other ways you could support us, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/feelingasian. Any donation amount goes a long way for the production of this podcast. Check it out. We offer different subscription tiers, but any donation amount gets you a shout out on the podcast. And let's jump right into them, Youngmi. Are you ready?
Yeah.
For our last Patreon shout out roundup of 2021,
Woo.
Our first shout out goes out to Tien Nguyen.
This to me, I feel like this person has like a startup, like an app person vibe.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Very lawful, very smart, very rich.
What do you think the app is? I think it's like a fitness app. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Oh, fitness app. I was thinking they use their intellect in tech for actual good. It's like a startup that helps underserved communities become more active in local
fitness.
Politics.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like underserved communities, and we distribute yoga mats and 2-pound weights.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
anyway,
Tien,
thank you.
Thank you for your donation. Next shout out goes out to Charles Rowe.
Charles, first of all, do you think this person goes by Charles, or like one of the Chucky or Chuck or CJ or something like that? You think they just go with Charles?
I think Charles. Have you ever met an Asian Chuck?
I haven't met a Chuck since 1973, so no.
Chuck Rowe. Chuck Rowe. That's a good TV personality name.
Damn, I think it's time to bring back the Chuck.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this person goes by Chuck.
Does Chuck secretly work for E! Entertainment, and he's the guy on the red carpet? What's going on, y'all? It's Chuck Rowe here on the red carpet of the Nickelodeon 2021 Children's Choice Awards.
That's so believable.
Okay, I changed my answer. It's Chuck Rowe 100%.
And they work in entertainment.
They work in entertainment. Chuck, thank you for your donation. Our next shout out goes out to Margot. Just Margot.
Margot. Oh my God. Margot is
aloof hot girl vibes.
Yeah, Margot, you can't not be hot with the name Margot. That's for sure.
Yeah. Very indie.
Artsy. Yeah, indie, artsy, perpetually in college. Doesn't matter if she's 47. She's still in art school.
And your leather jacket looks so good.
Yeah.
Margot, thank you. Next shout out goes out to Melody Wing.
I love Melody. Melody, the name is so solid. What did I think? But I feel like this person has like a very close-knit family unit. That's the vibe I'm getting. Really gets along with her sister.
Okay. I see that. Melody. What does Melody do? Melody is a lampshade designer.
Okay. There we go. We're back.
Yeah, we're back. Melody
All right.
is a lampshade designer.
I believe that, yeah.
Yeah, so Melody, give a hug to your close-knit family for us, and thank you for supporting the pod. And happy holidays. Our last shout-out for 2021 goes out to Quan Chen.
Quan Chen. I'm going to go the lampshade route. I think this person is a curtain specialist. They specialize in installing very high-end curtains for like in the homes of wealthy people. They charge like $100,000 for, like one room for the perfect installation of curtains, right?
Yeah.
The world's best.
I'm seeing that. World's best curtain specialist. Therefore, extremely rich. However, Quan has incredibly good taste. So,
or maybe something super rich and fancy that we've never heard of. You know how there's like floral arranger people, and they charge like $100,000 per floral arrangement because they're like fourth generation.
I didn't
Japanese
even know that existed. That's how that's how far removed I am from this world.
It's like a rich person thing. They have all these like specialties and they charge a lot of money for it. And it's like this, if you're rich, you would never know, if you weren't rich.
Right. So they are arranging flowers at charity galas and like tributes for their great-great-grandfather who was one of the first settlers in America.
Yeah, they're charging like $1 million a wedding for their floral arrangements.
Oh my God.
This is this person.
Can we just do that instead?
What if we just bullshitted? What if I was like, yeah, I'm the world's most famous floral. Like, I could just show up looking like this and people would be like, yeah, that person looks like.
Yeah, I would believe it. If you showed up looking just your normal self. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
All right. Anyway. Well, let's pack it up, folks. The podcast is done. Youngmi is now going to become a floral arranger for incredibly rich people.
I need
money. It was a nice ride. Well, once again, thank you everyone for your continued support of the podcast. It really means a lot. And let's move on from the corporate sellout Patreon vibes and jump into this recap episode, Youngmi.
The meat of our podcast. Well, before we do the clips, Brian, how are you feeling? The last episode of the year, Brian Park.
How am I feeling? I am feeling really happy and really fucking proud of us. And that's it. I'm feeling really, really happy and really proud because Youngmi, you mentioned earlier on this episode that our podcast was spotlighted by CNN on some like year-end list of best podcast roundup, whatever. But no. It's incredibly validating. But I'm also really proud of us because of that list of 10 podcasts, we are the only independent podcast on there.
Wow. Look at us.
Yeah. And, you know,
Wow.
it's we've gotten into a lot of disagreements, ups and downs this past year between us as creative partners. But yeah, it's a really awesome feeling to be recognized for all of the hard work, because we work really hard on this. Like,
yeah.
And it's I'm especially proud of us because, you know, it's just the two of us, and we, you know, it's now being recognized by fucking CNN of all places. It's nuts. You know, we don't have any, like, we obviously have like a fantastic team who helps us realize this podcast, but
yeah,
you know, it's not like we have the backing of like Spotify or Gimlet Media. Like,
yeah,
we're doing it through, this is true DIY collaborative spirit to me. Like, you know, to the listeners who donate to our Patreon, thank you so much, because it really helps us grow our team and reinvest into this podcast, because we, you know, I love doing it. And I don't know, I just want to take a moment to reflect on this past year and just to relish like all the hard work that we put into this podcast. So I'm really happy and really proud of us.
You know, I'm really glad you brought up the independent thing, Brian, because it is pretty, you know, like both of us are like, this is so much work. What are we doing? But we are getting it done. And it is kind of, it's sort of like, it is kind of shocking that we are doing this thing on our own that other people have like full blown corporations helping them with. Do you know what I mean? And, but I just want to shout out our small team that helps us.
Yes.
Oliver Cho, who is our new sound engineer. You're hearing their work right now. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our wonderful
video editor,
Alex Chan. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing their work. and I guess that's it.
Special shout out goes out to
Chloe, our flyer decorator, in-house design
graphic
team.
designer. And a special shout out goes out to Juan Aranda for the new album cover design. The
album cover, beautiful. And June, who did the photo shoot.
Yes.
And Emmanuel, who did the old photo shoot. All of these people are, you know, we try very hard to compensate everyone fairly, but, you know, along the way, people have really helped us out.
And also, shout out goes out to our OG sound engineer, Sarah Pak.
Oh my God, who helped us out so much.
Huge shout out to her. We didn't even know what a sound engineer was until she
was like, this sounds like shit. Can I help you? And so, yeah, I want to thank all these people. You know, a lot of people just literally, like Sarah, just jumped in and helped us along the way when we didn't even know what we were doing. So shout out to all of them. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. And that encapsulates how I feel. Last how I'm feeling for 2021. How about you, Youngmi? How are you feeling?
I feel like you're feeling Asian today was so appropriate for the episode. Mine is, I had like this huge fight with my mom, Brian. Also very appropriate for me. And I'm gonna end this year. Thank you everyone for listening. But we all know why you're here. You want to hear the chaos. I had the hugest meltdown with my mom, and I just want to this is what I decided what was happening, and I just want to point it out really quick because I know, like a lot of people go through weird emotional stuff during the holidays, and I think last year I talked about how my mom has this tendency to ruin big holidays for me, and so around the holidays I get very nervous around receiving gifts because, just to. Talk about what I talked about. I think maybe it was even 2 years ago. My mom would give me a gift and then punish me because she felt like she would overspend because my dad would force her to. And then I would open the gifts. I'd be really excited. And then she'd be like, because of you, I had to borrow money from my friends and it was really embarrassing. And then I would get punished. And so as an adult, that came out as me not being able to receive gifts. Like if anyone gives me a gift, I get very cagey and uncomfortable. And so then what happened this year, my mom was like, So she was like, I sent you a box of like things for me now. And then I was like, I got a message and it said your box is, I got no message, no slip. And my mom said she got a text saying the box was delivered. And I was like, well, not only is it not here, there's no slip, there's no like information. And then I messaged with the tracking number and they were like, we will get back to you. And I never heard back. And I was like, Mom, this is really weird. I don't know what's going on with this box. And she like freaked out and she was like, well, I put money in there and what am I going to do? Like, and just getting very emotional. Mm-hmm. And then I started, I don't know, I had the most emotional response where I literally just broke down. And I was just like, Mom, like I can't spend the emotional energy soothing you right now. Like you're like freaking out, you're crying, you're sad. I was like, I never asked you for anything. You've never given me any. She never really sends me anything. And I was just like, this is why I never ask you for anything, because it's not a gift. It's like, it ends up being me like having to get yelled at and like soothing you, you know what I mean? And emotionally supporting you because you're so upset. And I was just like, I was like, I'm so tired right now. I don't care about the box. Like I will send you money, like whatever money you lost, I will send it to you, but I just don't have the emotional capacity to deal with you. So I said that. And I said, don't talk to me. Don't like get on the phone and cry and, you know, make this about you like freaking out. I don't have the energy to spend on that. I was like, I'm going to put money in your account, whatever money you lost, I will put it in there. Wow. Just don't ever talk to me. And so then I freaked out to 1,000. And then my mom was like, she was like, okay, calm down, relax. Like that's how she responded.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, did I just out crazy the crazy?
Oh my God, Youngmi.
like I came in hot. I was like, stop, like, ah. And then she was like, okay, never mind. I'm fine. So yeah. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I out crazy the crazy.
Holy cow, Youngmi. Jeez. Even hearing that
and then
story,
the
I
next
was like, whoa, God. I mean, to me, it sounds like obviously you have a very complicated dynamic with your mom, as you recounted on this podcast. But that it sounds like that reaction was just a buildup of pent up emotion or energy that was there, because obviously, like for sure, you know, when you send someone money, you obviously want it to get delivered. Like, I would be worried too if I sent a package to someone and it said it was delivered. I'm like, damn, I sent money in there. Fuck. But
so here's the thing. Okay, I know I probably sound really horrible, but the backstory is that my entire life has been my mom being extremely emotional and me having to soothe her, right?
Right.
Which is, it's okay now that I'm 37 and she's 60 that she's emotionally frail. But this was happening when I was like 5 years old. Like my mom would have an emotional breakdown in public and I would have to be like, it's okay, everything's okay. And what that led me to becoming is like in every situation, I'm like, before I can think about my emotions, I think about everyone else. Like if something bad happens, you know, let's say I get in a car accident, like my instinct is to be like, oh, is everyone okay? Before even like thinking, oh my God, my legs are broken or whatever. I'm like, is everyone else okay? And then later I'll be like, oh my God, my legs are broken. You know what I mean?
Oh, I totally get it too.
Yeah. So I think as an adult, I'm like, I can't do it anymore. You know,
right?
Like,
and especially with things like packages in New York, for whatever reason, sometimes they get stolen or they get delivered to the wrong apartment. Yeah, these are things that are completely out of your control, you know. But if you're the person sending it, you want to, as the person who's receiving it, you're going to take the blame because it's just It's important, and you want a reason, like a actual concrete reason for why this important thing did not get delivered, you know.
So this is the thing. In my head, the actual situation, I'm okay with. I'm like, okay, a box gets lost or stolen. That's fine. I'll deal with that. It's sad. We lost Christmas gifts for my son. But like the unbearable part for me was the idea that my mom was going to cry and I would have to like come in and like and put my feelings aside, you know. And I have feelings too. Like I was like, dude, you never send my son anything, your grandchild. He can't even like trust you or depend on you. And I feel like you've let both of us down, and like those are like hard emotions that I feel. But I can't even like say I'm so let down by you, Mom, because I have to sit there and like hold her hand through her crying, you know? So that's why I was like, I can't do this. Don't put anything on me. Anyway, the end of the story is that the fucking box came the next day.
Nice.
So that's the end of the story. And then I was like, Mom, the box is here. Don't talk to me.
Wow.
But
so
it's a Christmas miracle.
Perhaps the best outcome, you expressed how you felt and the package got there okay.
It's fine. But I think, you know, I'm glad that I stopped her, because I was like, we have to stop this dynamic. Like, I'm not here to be your mom. You weren't there for me when I was a kid to emotionally support me. And so I have resentment. So it's weird because like a lot of things I was saying to her during our fight, I was like, oh, this is like what you would say to me when I was a kid, you know?
Right.
Like if I was crying, I'd be like, stop being so fucking sad. Like things like that. I was saying that to her because I was like, I'm like giving you,
Whoa.
I'm like, it's switched now because like when I was a kid, you weren't doing this for me. So now I don't want to do it for you, kind of thing. Which I know it sounds really cruel, and I know people are judging me right now, but you know, what am I going to do?
Damn. That's, I mean, it is reflective of how parent-child dynamics switch with age. I mean, I'm sure it happens across many cultures, but even in Asian, especially in Asian cultures, like the expectation is for when our parents get old and weak, then you assume the more parental figure position. And it's interesting to me how now you're at the crossroads where you are having to act like a mother to your mom, but now you realize that those like patterns that you grew up with are now like you see yourself doing it, you know?
After the argument, I was like, oh my God, I'm treating her how she treated me. And like, even though I feel really shitty, like, oh, I should be nicer to her. I'm like, I did learn this from her. Like when someone's vulnerable and fragile, like you don't want to give them support. And I mean, obviously this is me and my relationship with my mom, because there's lots of resentment there, but that's not how I am with my son. It's very different.
Right.
Like the second he is upset, like I'm just like, you know, like I disappear. Like I don't care about me. I care about him. But it's like, it's very interesting for me to see that. And it makes me feel a little like, maybe I'm being a little bit too like vindictive or something, but it's, I don't know. I don't know how to fix that, but you know, whatever. Those things are messy.
It's still fresh and, you know, you're in process.
But it was funny because after I got mad at her, she was almost like nicer. She like didn't really. She was like, yeah, that's like how people should treat each other. she was like, okay, like she's totally fine now. I feel like I drew a messy boundary, but I did draw a boundary, I think. Yeah. Anyway, should we get to our clips?
Let's do it. Okay.
Do you want to start with yours?
Okay. I'm down to start with mine. So listeners, Youngmi and I, we each chose 3 of our favorite clips, and let's just jump right into it. So for the first clip that I chose, Youngmi, I chose a clip from our episode with Michelle Zauner, also known as episode. Japanese Breakfast, and you know, shout out to her. She's had crushed 2021. She won 2021.
The biggest, I feel like the most like successful Asian of 2021. Her and Bohan Yang, who we also had on the podcast. That was amazing.
Woo. New York Times bestseller and nominated for 2 Grammys.
Yeah.
That's some
just
next level
winning
shit.
On all fronts.
Yeah, but you know, I chose this episode because I feel that Michelle has a talent for describing very challenging emotions. And you know, with her book Crying in H Mart and what she talked about on this particular episode, she's very adept at you know, recounting grief. And She opened up about the grief that came with losing her mother, and more largely, she in this episode, I felt that she challenges, society's larger tendency to shy away from these harder feelings that
Mm.
we want to look away from. You brought
Mhm.
up pregnancy, and when you went through pregnancy, there were just
Mhm.
you didn't know, like, it's one of those things where you have to go through it to know what it's like, but why do we like shy away from like what comes with it? Like, you'll get to the nitty-gritty of like, what do these difficult experiences really feel like? And
Right.
and I also chose this clip because this came at a time when the Asian American community was collectively grieving.
Mhm.
This happened in the aftermath of the Atlanta shootings, and
Mm.
Michelle really, she said it so well when she said, so sometimes like we just don't know how we feel in the
Mhm.
aftermath of these sorts of things, or how we're supposed to feel,
Mm.
and the questioning that comes with that. And
Mhm.
it's challenging, and it's okay to not know how to feel.
Right.
And because I think there's a lot of guilt that comes with these particular experiences. Like, I imagine, I've never been pregnant, but that's a thing that's come up in our own podcast, where why don't I feel a
Mhm.
certain way about this certain
Yep.
thing? And yeah, I think that's a feeling that kind of was prescient in 2021, and I think
Yeah.
Michelle did like a really, she's incredibly gifted and talented in capturing and expressing that emotion.
Yeah. It's like one of these things that I really like to talk about all the time. Society has like this tendency to make something very positive or just negative, and like the truth of everything, whether it's death or birth, is that it's a mixture of both. And I think she really puts it into words well.
Like, what are some misconceptions about grief that are portrayed in popular media that really annoy you, or just about the feeling and experience of it all?
I think a big reason why I felt like I wanted to write this book, or like so much of the process of living as a caretaker for 6 months in Eugene,
Mm-hmm.
I had like so much anger and shock at like, and a lot of the book is honestly, it's very intense, and it's very graphic at times. And it was important to me, I guess, to like present like the horrific detail of what happens when someone dies or when someone's health deteriorates. And I think it was largely because I felt so angry that no one warned me that that's like what it could look like. I felt very ill prepared for the process of watching my mom's health deteriorate. I felt really unprepared for when she died. And I was just like, why doesn't anyone tell you about this? I felt very angry. So I had this real sense of urgency, in part, to write this book, to really show what it looks like, because I wanted, I think part of it is just like, I think every culture like has a difficult time talking about death and like the ugly parts of like the human body and what happens and all that. But for instance, like no one, I didn't know about like rigor mortis. Like I didn't know that was something that happened, and like I needed to talk about it, like, and I needed to like talk about all the symptoms that happens. And also no one knows that, like, a lot of the times in media, it's like someone just like closes their eyes. They're like, I love you, and like know that like I'll always be with you. You know what I mean? That's like not what happens. It's a very slow, really painful process of like someone losing like function by function. And I just felt like I had to talk about it. That for me was like an overshare thing that I needed to go into to like let go of, I think.
You know what I feel about that's like, I feel like similarly that no one actually really talks about in a realistic way? Birth. which is interesting because it's like, you know, technically they're opposite ends of the, like, there's so many things, like, because even to this day there's so many, like, now women are allowed to write and stuff, like there are lots of we're allowed to go outside, you know, like there's so many writers and women that talk about it and stuff like that, but like in popular media, like what you were saying about they close their eyes and then they're dead, or that's like how birth is portrayed in movies, you know, the woman's like screaming for 5 minutes and then there's a baby, and it's, you know, like, but it was the same sort of thing. Like it's so weird how those sort of big events, humans don't really want to think about the nitty gritty part.
I want to know personally. Like,
no, you don't. Just kidding. No, the birth thing is interesting.
I mean, I don't want you to share it with me now, but like I do like, I want to know that kind of stuff, especially like as you know, I'm in my 30s. I want to have a kid eventually. I want to know like what happens. You know, I find myself like way more fast.
But then I found myself like you, like I was like, when I was going through it, I was like, why doesn't anyone talk about this? Like I'm going crazy, you know, like this is then you're really alone. You feel alone in a process that every single person goes through. It's so bizarre, right? I'm really glad that you wrote about that.
Oh, thank you.
And the weird thing about grief, too far. no, the thing about the death thing is that it's not even like, because obviously this is like an Asian podcast, it's not even like an Asian thing really. It's every culture is kind of like, like let's not talk about that. So
and you know, that was a personal grief that you were experiencing. It informed your work, and I guess what I'm curious is, in light of recent events, it's palpable. It feels like a lot of Asian Americans in this country are going through like a collective grieving, where like the news cycle is very triggering, and we're all like processing and expressing ourselves in our own ways. And how is that for you? Where, you know, I feel like for many years your personal grief informed your artwork, and then now you're sort of thrust into this new space where there's like a collective grieving that's happening all around us.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's a very different type of grief, you know, and I had like a lot of anxiety of like, how am I, you know, in the same way that grief can happen where you have this anxiety of like, am I feeling the right thing? Did I like love this person enough? Like, I remember when I went to my mom's like funeral, I'm being like, am I going to cry? Like, what the fuck if I don't cry at like my mom's funeral? Like, everyone's going to think I'm this like horrible daughter. And all this anxiety happens. Like, similarly, I think that there's this like real anxiety about like what you're supposed to feel right now. And there's this constant feeling like, am I not a good enough Asian if I'm not feeling like this certain type of way or talking about this in a certain type of way? And it's a really new thing for a lot of us, I feel like. I mean, after the shooting, I did like 8 interviews, and it was like thrust on me really like unexpected. And I felt I did like this entertainment, like it was like, what is it called? Entertainment Tonight or whatever in Canada. And the woman's just like, so tell me about like, you know, how are you feeling after like the shooting and all that? And I was just like I can't even, and you know, it's just frustrating because I feel like, you know, I, as an artist, like you don't really anticipate like the kind of platform that you're going to have or like what your role is in all of this. And I really want to be like someone courageous and has like a great thing to say and like uses my platform and like directs people to action and all this stuff. But it was also like a lot, I also, you know, felt very distant from a lot of my peers. Like I was seeing a lot of my friends being like, stop, like this needs to stop doing this to us. And it's like, who follows you that, you know, who's talking to, like, did someone follow you that's been doing this? Like, why are you saying this? Or like some people would be like, you need to check in on your AAPI friends. And it's like, I don't want white people to like be texting me right now. It's like a lot of my like friends I never talk to are all of a sudden like, how are you feeling? It's like, I don't, it's more labor for me to tell you how I'm feeling than it is for me to just like ignore you. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the right thing to say, and I get really like frustrated with myself because I just haven't known how to respond, or like I'm the type of person that's really like, I really like to rally around like one direct way that I think that we can accomplish something. And I don't think that this is there is anything in this situation beyond this real reckoning that I think a lot of Asian American people are happening of just like, we are so shy about talking about this, or we feel like we don't deserve to take up any space, or that it's not real enough, or that they're just microaggressions and not real. Even I felt that way, like I have heard a lot of stories. I luckily haven't had this in my life, but of and maybe it's because my mom was Korean and had a white husband. And we grew up in a really like hippy dippy, like on the surface, like very liberal environment, safe environment.
Right.
That it might've been different, but I do have a lot of friends who've told me that like their brother or their parents like have been like assaulted in this way. And there are a lot more hate crimes than people are aware of. But I think like, maybe like our parents' generation, a lot of them came here with the idea that like we're never going to fit in, and this is of course going to happen to us. They had like this kind of expectation of this, and a lot of the younger generation are like, no, I was born here or I was raised here, and like they have more of this sense of like righteousness and entitlement in a positive way to be like, okay, this is not something that we should have to live with, and we should talk about.
Youngmi, so kick us off. What is the clip that you chose?
Okay, so the first clip that I chose is from our Asian Seeking Asian Therapist episode. It's when we had a bunch of therapists come on the show who are of Asian descent, discussing not only issues that their Asian clients have, but how it felt to be Asian therapists. And the clip that really touched me during that episode was from Sonali Rashawar, who is known on social media as the Fat Sex Therapist. And they discuss, their specialty is in diet trauma and sexual assault trauma. Diet trauma is something that I had never heard of until I met them. And they discuss the correlation between diet trauma and sexual assault trauma, essentially coming from the idea that is present in a lot of societies, but unfortunately very present in Asian cultures, that your body does not really belong to you, and you don't have bodily autonomy, and it belongs to the larger culture. So that's that blew my mind when I heard them say that. So that's the clip that I chose.
Yeah, that I remember that particular moment because, I know that it impacted you very deeply because you've been very open about your struggles with body dysmorphia. But just hearing it's one of those things that I feel very lucky to be able to speak to people like Sonali who are able to sort of like rewire the thinking that goes on in our brains. Yeah. That's how I felt. I was like, click, and I felt my brain like a new like connection happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right.
I see folks. I know that your question was really about perfectionism and like how I see it show up, how I see it clinically, and I think for the clients who I work with who are South Asian, a lot of times it's rooted in casteism. The perfectionism that we inherit comes from this place of thinking that our body isn't for us to enjoy, but it is something it needs to be controlled or restricted or maintained, and it's something that it needs to be like a project that someone else is proud of. And achievement is very important, right? I'm not like a person. I don't get to have feelings, but I have to excel and I have to assimilate and I have to succeed within capitalism and white supremacy in order to receive conditional praise.
That like really hit me so hard. That's so on point. I mean, because, I know that you specialize in diet trauma, and I'm fascinated by that because I feel like, a lot of my humor is about that too, like how I've had so much trauma. I've experienced that, and I see it as a cultural thing, as a Korean thing. But what you said, that my body is meant for other people to accept, that is, I feel like, such a, not to generalize, but that is such an Asian thing.
It's one of the earliest ways that we as non-men especially, but people of all genders experience. But it's the way that diet culture and rape culture kind of overlap and look identical. And each of these structures teach us that our body is not our own, that it's for someone else to objectify, someone else to control or dictate what it should look like, what it should eat like, what it should dress like, how it should perform in school. And if you think about it, you know, like if social control and all the tasks that we have to manage in order to look like we're doing a good job takes up this much brain space, you know, other things can't exist there too, like abolition or thinking about how to have land back or reparations. We're not really thinking about how to tear down the structures if we're too busy assimilating into them.
For my second clip, I similar to you, I chose a clip from one of our wonderful therapists, but this was from the episode that we did with the therapists Peter Adams and Melissa Yao. It's titled An Evening with Two Asian Therapists. And, you know, listeners, as you all know, and Youngmi, like, we champion therapy a lot on this podcast. And we can all see that therapy and the discussion surrounding mental health has become increasingly more destigmatized in like recent years. There's just so many more resources than there were 5 years ago, I would say. You know, we see commercials all the time for teletherapy, and there's so many mental health startups. However, I feel that with that, therapy has sort of become this catch-all solution to fix all of our problems, you know? It's like if you're going through a difficult time, like obviously like you should seek help and go see a therapist, but I also think it's important to note that with therapy there comes a lot of homework. Like you can't just go, but you also have to take the time to practice like whatever it is that your therapist is working with you, you know? Like that, because that's how things really stick. And I felt in this episode, like Peter and Melissa like imparted a lot of those moments that we just talked about, like where you feel your brain, it's like a aha moment, your brain rewires itself. But they also provided so many great action items to reinforce those aha moments and put those moments into practice. And I chose one regarding setting boundaries with your parents, because that's something that I struggle with, and it's something that comes up a lot in our DMs and emails from our listeners. And you know, I thought this was like a very noteworthy moment to highlight, because they give us like action items to do, to like sit and like, this is what quote unquote doing the work is.
Viewers or listeners or viewers can't see how this was written, but the question is all in caps at the end, and then it says without cutting them off, which kind of illustrates my point from earlier about why I think this is one of the most underrated skills for Asian American children to develop, is boundaries. This is the subtext of that, without cutting them off. It means people always tell me to just cut them off.
Right.
You guys don't tell me to just cut them off. That's why I'm putting this in caps, right? I'm looking for a different alternative. But one of the things I like to do with clients who are coming in with that mentality is I do like to try to get them to kind of go back on that a little bit, and not to say that they would never cut them off, essentially, but to understand instead what their limits are. So when we operate from this place of this is never an option, I will never cut them off, this can never happen, I could never do it, etc., and so on, there's a restricting sort of nature to that. I think it's a useful exercise, even if there's some difficulty in sitting with the idea initially that we all have limits. And what are yours? They may be exponentially more you know, they may be greatly different from, one of your friends or your white buddy, and you guys talk about this stuff, but they are there. So an example, maybe, you know, someone may really try to sit with that, and they may say, well, if my father ever laid hands on my daughter,
right,
you know, if I saw some of the things we experienced, my siblings and I, if I saw that or became aware of that, then yes, you know, like,
yes,
right.
And again, they may seem unrelated, but I don't know, just from clinical experience, I feel like moving from there is a line and it is an option, and I can articulate what that is, I think creates a sort of a little more of a freedom.
Yeah.
You're operating less from a place of this is the only option and this can never happen, and the restriction of that, to I know where my line is and I can work within that.
Whoa.
That's so great. Damn.
I know. Meanwhile, I'm just over spouting off it do be like that. It is what it is.
That was very different advice than it do be like that. That's for sure. And me talking about a dream that I had. That was very that's such good advice. And I just want to say I really liked how you said I feel like that was really important when you said, like, you do have a limit. You might not know where it is, but you do have a limit, and maybe just thinking about what that is,
like, broke my brain, because it is more liberating once you test that limit, and now you know you have an actual stronger sense of what is that boundary that you're playing with, and I can just feel like once I know what that is, it just illuminates how I'm going to react to so many other things going forward.
Yeah.
It just frees you of some of that. It's subtle. There's a subtle liberation.
Yeah.
So for my second clip, I chose one of my favorite episodes. Obviously, that's why I chose it. From these are this was one of my favorite discussions. Honestly, I really love all our guests, and to be honest, it was like really hard to choose my favorites. I feel like, I don't know if this is how you feel, Brian, but every time somebody comes on the podcast, I'm like, damn, we really got some information out of you, right?
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
And I feel like it's because we get real chaosy and chaotic, like, right in the front, and we're like, I hate my mom, and then they're like, well, you know, me too.
It's the power cringe in us.
I think they want to, like,
these two.
They want to out chaos us. They're like, well, you know what? But my second clip was from the episode "You'll Be Very Happy but Very Poor," featuring Alexander Chee, the much celebrated writer. You know, every time I mention him, people are like, I love him. Like, they're so obsessed. Brilliant writer. I enjoy all of his books so much. But he's also biracial. He's half Korean and half white, like I am. And he also lived a portion of his childhood in Korea. So we got to talk about how biracial people are viewed in Korea, which is very, very different than how they're viewed in the West. Because, like we say in the episode, like, in the West, they view anybody that's, like, even partially white to, like, in a better light than other people, because of white supremacy. So we discussed how biracial people are viewed in Korea, and I really, really like this discussion.
There's an expression, right, in Korean, something about, like, being like a demon. What is the?
I identify as that.
You know what? Yes. I will look it up later. And but what I was aware of, for example, was, like, when I was presented to my father's family at the age of 9 months, when we moved back to Korea from the U.S. You know, my parents did a kind of reverse migration where they moved in with my grandparents in Seoul, and my father took a job with his father in his fisheries company. We lived there for just about 3 years. My dad's siblings were still in the house, and they had feelings about it that I wasn't always aware of. I had an aunt who was furious for example, about my identity, about my existence. When my grandmother had, seen my father off to Korea, she had said to him, whatever you do, don't marry a blonde-haired, blue-eyed American girl, which is exactly what he did. So I don't know if that guaranteed it, but
Yeah.
And my eyes at the age of 9 months when I arrived at the house were not brown or hazel as they are now. They were a kind of blue that infant's eyes often are. So so when I arrived, I was also the first male of the 41st the oldest male with the last name of the 41st generation of Chee, and here I was as an infant with blue eyes. So they were kind of it was really
Demon.
Youngmi, so for the last clip that I wanted to highlight for this episode, it comes from Bohan Phoenix. And
yes.
It's in the episode titled Too Foreign for Here, Too Foreign for Home. And, listeners, Bohan Phoenix is an incredibly talented musician and artist who, I feel he really wholeheartedly embraces the pursuit of authenticity. And, his practice as a musician / artist really resonated with me and my own work as a comedian. But for the listeners out there who aren't in a creative field or who work, a stable job, maybe perhaps in tech or law or public policy, et cetera, or business, I just feel like we can learn a lot from Bohan on how to challenge our own views and work to ensure that they both align with how we want to step forward in the world. Because he talked about the process of realizing how he was exoticizing himself and to not be afraid to start from scratch. But that only comes with constant questioning and really sitting with your work and who you are as a person and how you project yourself in the world. And does that feel right to you? And that's why I really admire Bohan, and I thought this clip was I thought it was really meaningful, and I thought I wanted to highlight it.
I'm glad that you chose this clip because I feel like one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as an adult is that it's okay that if you used to do something whatever problematic and you learn from that, there's nothing to be ashamed of. That's all of us,
Right.
And
Does it ever feel like it's challenging to convey that, your story in music so that maybe American audiences fuck with it and then maybe people in China proper fuck with it too? Because I guess it can, I imagine it must be challenging because your experience is so unique,
Yeah, I mean, so definitely started off rapping, in English. Everything starts with imitation, and I was just trying to impress people with how well I can put together rhymes, because I thought that was how you get famous. You got to impress people with how you rap. And I did that for a long time. Graduated NYU, I was still kind of doing that, hitting all the open mics. I was even standing outside Apollo Theater for 5 hours to get in for the amateur night. I did that 6 times.
Damn.
And people will be like, oh, that's cool, but nothing really stuck until I started to kind of write my own story into the songs. And then people that people would just hit me up, be like, yo, I feel this, I relate to this. And it got kind of addicting to have people to kind of understand you in this way, and so when I started writing more English and Chinese, I was like, oh, I found my sound, I rap in 2 languages now. And, simultaneously, whereas when in the past, when I was rapping only in English and blogs never gave a fuck, now I'm getting a write-up on Fader. Now I'm getting a write-up on so-and-so. And it was like everything was telling me, oh, you're doing the right thing. Keep going. I was like, I got my sound. I did a front page with Bandcamp. We even titled it like Oriental Trap or something, you know, because I was like, I was like, I'm getting attention. Then it wasn't until I moved to China for a couple years because music was popping over there. It wasn't until then I realized, oh, what I was doing was exoticizing myself for trying to get attention. And I stepped away from the music and like I stopped storytelling because halfway through the song, now I got to switch it up to Chinese just to be exotic, just to be a bilingual rapper. And then when I went to China, I realized, okay, like people like me here for the novelty of the perspectives that I have, but my Chinese is not good enough to hang with the local rappers. And as much of a like a novelty as it is that I switch between English and Chinese, they want to hear their story, you know? And so it was very interesting for me to realize that and then like kind of like dial it back and be like, okay, am I doing this now because I have a following and I'm like worried about which one I need to please, or do I need to go back to when I first started making music and just make music? So to answer your question a long-winded way, at first, it was very conflicting. How do I tailor my songs? Like I have a 4-song EP. How do I make sure that's enough to show both sides that I'm a good rapper, but I'm also like deep, but I'm also, you know, and I realized, man, I can't. So, and now I don't even think about who's going to listen to it or who's going to be happy. And now I'm just like, if I'm happy to show this to my friends, I'm happy with it, you know?
Right.
But interestingly, through that journey of figuring out what kind of music I want to make, and I actually, you know, ended up making certain stuff like the Overseas and 3 Days in Chengdu and Jalas that because I thought those moments I should have been talking about my identity, and that's like that's who I am in this role. Like my contribution to hip hop is to tell the story of the overseas kids that people don't really talk about.
Yeah.
And the idea of being too foreign for here, being too foreign for home. The fact that when I'm in China, the minute I open my mouth, they know I've come from America. But over here, no matter how well I speak English, they don't look at me as American.
Right.
So I just stopped thinking about all that because it was affecting my mood and the music I wanted to make. I got really serious all the time. And I was like, I'm not that serious all the time in life, in real person. So now I'm just trying to make music and yeah.
All right, so for my last clip, this is a little bit of an emotional one. It's from the episode Outside My Comfort Zone featuring SuChin Pak from MTV News. You know, if you are my age or Brian's age, you remember she was probably one of the first people that you really
OG.
saw, an OG Asian representation on MTV News back, you know, in the day when MTV was life, right? And I remember seeing her and being like, wow, like Asian people really are here. Like, you know, but in this episode, she joined us because during the pandemic, she came out and openly talked about this incident that had happened back in the days when she was on MTV News when we were watching her. And she had never publicly discussed it before. And it involves a very racist incident from a white man who was, you know, in a position of power above her at work. And she discusses calling him out there and then and what that felt like emotionally. And I feel like that was a very important discussion because a lot of people think that people that are whistleblowers and people that bring things like this to light are brave and, you know, we're feeling like, oh, this is justice and we have to do this. But a lot of times that's not what it feels like at all. So that's why I picked this clip.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, courage can look many different ways. That's what I took away from it.
For SuChin, it just looks like a very wonderful, loving, sweet Korean person.
The thing that was a most important thing for me to say was I did not feel brave or courageous or strong. I was vomiting and shaking. I was in bed, like you know, like that kind of anxiety. I deal with more anxiety than depression, and I get like a crushing anxiety where like I can't even get out of bed. So that was who I was. I wasn't the like high powered woman, you know what I mean? Like, you know, in a pantsuit telling people off. Like I crawled into a hole and just cried for months, hoping it would be okay, but really feeling like I was going to get fired. Like I really did not think that I was ever gonna be able to return. And I say that because I think that we have this impression, if you're in this situation now, that you should be acting some way, that some force of nature should give you the iron will and the strength to say something to that person who every day is pushing you down. And I'm telling you, you don't have to take that on. Like just feeling angry and feeling justified in your anger is enough. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I really wanted that to be clear. Like, I wasn't, I have a hard time when people only show courage in the most heroic way. Because it's not
that's just
that way.
That's just how it's portrayed and in popular
and that's
media.
It's
like, take no prisoners. I'm a badass. Like,
and that's amazing.
Standing up against the system. Yeah.
That's right. That's amazing. And I applaud that. But I also want to applaud all those, and I'm so glad you shared that story, Youngmi, of like the quivering, vomiting folks that can't say anything or finally one day get to say that little thing. Like, that's also heroic and courageous, you know?
It's making me really emotional. I don't know why. Just to like think, I think, you know, what I want to, because your post, you had so many like positive, you know, so much positive feedback, but I think something about you, and like, this is like, obviously I don't know you personally, but like your vibe is like, you just are such a sweet person. Like and I think a lot of people read that from you, and it just makes me, like, just hearing what you're saying, it just makes me so sad. Like,
okay, Youngmi. Well, dang, that was what a treat it was to do this podcast this past year.
Why are you saying it like that?
Oh, because I thought this is the end. You're gonna become a floral arranger in the Hamptons.
Oh yeah. It's it. It's done. I'm gonna work for rich people and charge them a lot and just be like, it's called a bouquet of 12 roses. It's $15,000. That's my new career.
Yeah. No, I sorry. I didn't mean to make it sound weird, but like you said, it was really hard for me to choose what my favorite clips were, because the initial list that I came up with was, there were so many names that I put on it, and to whittle it down was really challenging. And
you did send a very long list. I also made a list of all the discussions that we had, because we had some great discussions this year that we don't have time to discuss, but maybe we should do a part 2 of just all the discussions that we had. We had so many fights. I have to say, just to boil it down, this is what I think was great about our discussions this year. We had so many fights, and some of them were like very serious, but then at the end of it, like, no matter what, we were able to talk them through and not get them. Like, sometimes we, like, both of us did get emotional, but then we were able to like reconnect and be like, okay, I'm sorry, I was emotional, and be very I hate this word, but like reasonable. And I'm really proud of us for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I'm really proud of us. You know, I feel that since the inception of this, I've become so much. I've just found that I've grown a lot too, in just the way that I can like manage a working relationship like this and not harbor resentment, and I think that's how, and I think we're both like really good at that, and that's what helps us maintain this working relationship and this podcast. But you know, I think it's such a wonderful thing that it was really challenging for us to, you know, have to pick favorite clips, because like you said,
they're all my favorites.
yeah, it's a tremendous privilege to have this space and to have for anyone to even agree to do this podcast and deal with our cringe and our chaos and our line of questioning. But it makes me really excited and hopeful and optimistic going into 2022, because I hope that we can bring you more of the same, and if not, challenge ourselves more, grow as people, and I'm excited for what's to come.
I'm proud of us, Brian. I'm proud. This is the healthiest working relationship I've ever had with anybody in my life. I'm proud of our podcast. I'm proud to be recognized in CNN, called the fake news by Donald Trump himself.
Yes.
And and I'm proud of what we put out. And I'm really proud that our listeners enjoy our podcast. Thank you all so much. You mean the world to us. Even the ones that don't donate to our Patreon. You mean even more, because it's like, you're here for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. And thank you again, everyone. And thanks for a great 2021. And we hope you have an amazing new year.
See you next year. Follow us on Feeling Asian Podcast. Follow Brian at It's Brian Park. Follow me at YM Mayer. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.